Hey.
No.
I'm a day. Yo. Welcome to Lost in Translation web series, podcast version, aka LIT, aka Lit on Fire. By the way, guys, if you hear any sound of the throttling of an engine, it's because we are right by, like a mighty highway and have all these trucks passing and I'm just giving details.
Exaggerated details. Yes.
Okay, guys, my name is Damilola Afolabi. Oluwa Damilola Afolabi, which means the Lord bestows wealth upon me. So every time you say my name, be sure to have more zeros into your account. So just say Oluwa Damilola like 20 times and you become richer than Elon Musk. Trust me, it works, right? And I have with me on the show, Elektra, right? Introduce yourself.
Yes, Elektra. My name is Elektra Gill, and here I am.
The first time I tried to say Electra's name, as a Yoruba man from Nigeria, I said, I said, hi, Elektra. No, I said, hi, Elektra D'Nai Gill.
Deny Jill.
Denied.
It's denied. I am not denied.
Okay, but this goes into the heart of Lost in Translation, right?
Exactly, yes. I had to correct you a lot of times.
Okay. Before we go into the heart of the conversation, Lost in Translation, typically, picture this. A grumpy old man from Nigeria immigrated to America by his son, ends up under the same roof with a rebellious teenager from the foster care system, played by Elektra. And that's like a pot of boiling soup. Like everything that happens.
Pepper soup?
Pepper soup. You know pepper soup?
Yeah.
You have been hanging around with too many Africans, Elektra.
Not enough. Actually.
Okay. I'm trying to be serious here, Elektra. This is the first episode. And, well, I've never done this before. So if you're wondering why is everything just like everywhere, is because it's the first time. And my ethos as a creative person is to keep things real, like keep it 100. Like if you mess up, just go back and fix it. You know what I'm saying? So we'll try not to make this at least 10 hours long. We'll just try to keep it short, like 20 hours. Yeah, right? 20 hours. Just like if you're traveling.
Damilola, you never know.
Like if you're planning to travel from LA to East Coast, just listen to Lost in Translation podcast. It will take you through the ride.
Hopefully all of them, not just this one. But yeah.
Okay, why are we here, Elektra?
Why are we here?
Yeah.
Because you created this web series, wrote it,
Me?
directed it, acted in it. He's like some kind of quadruple threat or something. I don't know.
Stop.
Yeah, let me not make his head bigger than it is.
Yes, queen.
Oh no. That was not supposed to make it on here. That was not supposed to happen.
Okay.
Anyway, we're here because of that. And
we're here because of Lost in Translation, all right? And if you ask me, how did Lost in Translation happen? Lost in Translation is a byproduct of my heart to bridge the gap between Africans from the continent and Africans in diaspora, especially African Americans. And so this podcast is supposed to tackle, it's supposed to be a conversation starter. It's supposed to tackle the heart of the issue.
Right.
So I two entry points to this whole thing about Lost in Translation. The first one was what I said earlier about me just coming to America and realizing that there's a huge disparity in perspective and how we see ourselves. Like Africans have, and I don't want to generalize this, but there's a perceived stereotypical perspective, like how Africans from the continent perceive African Americans, and vice versa. Like African Americans also have this I don't want to say all, but for there's just general. I know there's a danger in generalizing, but there's a general perception of that African Americans have towards Africans too. And
Sure.
I was privileged to be a part of like a small group kind of a hangout one night, and we had Africans and African Americans in the house, and we had this whole conversation, and different things just came up, and I was like, oh wow, like this is how we see you, but it's generally true, and this is how you see us, but this is not generally true. So like how do we heal? How do we bridge this chasm between us? And so that was just percolating in my mind for a long time. Then I had a friend one day, we were talking, and she said, Dami, why are you coming at me sideways? I'm like, I'm in front of you. What do you mean why am I coming at you sideways? She was like, no, that's not what I mean. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't get that. Then another day, I was with another friend, and I was telling her about something that was going to happen, or just giving her information. And she's like, oh, damn it, chill. Let me give you the tea. I'm like, tea? Like, I didn't ask for tea. She's like, no, like, tell you about. I'm like, oh, in Nigeria, we say gist. Like in Lagos, the lingo for that is that, oh, let me give you the gist, or let me tell you about it. So then I realized that, oh, wow, like, we actually want the same thing. We actually want to communicate the same thing. But a lot of times, like, our truth get lost in translation. Mm-hmm. So it was then I said, what if this thing that's on my heart, this conversation that I want to start, what if I start with a very extremely farcical angle to it by creating a web series and creating these characters that sort of introduce the conversation. Mm-hmm. And then on a much more deeper level, we have a podcast that touches the conversations around that. And that was what gave birth to Lost in Translation. I know this is not a monologue series. It's not a TED Talk. So you will get your turn to... Yeah. What do you mean a lecture? My friend, behave yourself. Yeah. Don't allow Grandpa Tobi to come on. This is Damilola Afolabi.
Trisha can come on too. I'm not worried about it.
Okay, well done.
To sum everything up, I would say that you're saying we're between Africans and African Americans, we're actually saying the same thing. We're just speaking different languages.
Not to philosophize though, but I wonder, like, why do we have conflict? Why do people have conflict? And this goes beyond race or any kind of isms or schisms, but just generally, why do we have conflict? It's because we fail to understand each other. Mm-hmm. You understand? When understanding gets distorted, that's where conflict arises. And how does understanding gets distorted? Is because something in the means of communication, something gets lost. Yeah. So, and language is an interesting entry point to this. And language can be verbal and non-verbal. Like what your body, what I read as a Yoruba man in body language is completely different to what you, as a woman living in America, will read to that. Same thing for a Caucasian, same thing to an Asian person. So imagine we don't take time to listen. And let's say in Yoruba, this means, hey, Elektra Alpha. And in another culture, this means like all the like think of every curse word.
Fight.
Exactly, But from my culture, it means I'm just like, oh, I really like it. Like I'm so really happy to see you. And then you read that wrong, and you get upset with me, and you start a fight. And I'm like, why are you fighting? And next thing you know, World War VII is happening. So then I realized that, like a lot of times, conflict can be avoided if we actually just chill and listen. If we actually like ask ourselves, like, what do we really want? What is at the core? Like, what are we really going for? If we get to that, then we ask, how are we communicating that? How are we really, really expressing that? And if we can just take time to break this down, honestly, the world will be a better place. But that's not the conversation. Really, really, really. But bringing it to our perspective as Africans and African Americans, I think that the bottom line is we want the same thing. We're a lot alike. We're very, very, much alike. But I think the foundation of where our perception got warped is that we both walk around with a lot of pain and hurt.
Yeah.
And that reflects in the characters. And Lost in Translation. So Lost in Translation has two major characters. We have Grandpa Tobi, which I play as Damilola Afolabi, and Trisha, which the beautiful Elektra here plays. And the first episode that we're going to talk about today is the Angry Bird. Angry Bird, interesting, like speaking to anger and pain, but you know that they say that hurt people. So imagine if this group of people interact every time without actually like healing and listening, what happens? And it's just more pain, it's just more anger, it's just more distrust and more, and the gap just keeps widening. So what if this gets to be a bridge? What if this starts something, Yeah. I'm not saying we're going to change the world with this, but what if?
Yeah. What if it starts the conversation?
What if it starts the conversation, yeah.
Or even just sparks in people's heart the want to understand, because I think that's the heart of it, is you have to actually want to understand the other person.
Yeah.
Like, in order to understand them, because if you don't want to understand, you're not going to.
Yes.
So.
And yeah, please feel free to always interrupt me, because I have a tendency to always just go on this long rant. I'm an actor, so sometimes I just get into monologue mode and I just keep blah, 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 blah. So feel free, all right? I'm not hugging the mic. You can see the mic is in the middle. But you said something that I really just really touched my heart, but I can't remember where to pick it up. I don't know. Why do I keep looking down? Like, what's down there? Like,
I don't know. What is it?
You're here, the camera is, and I keep looking up, and I keep looking up. Like, damn, focus, focus. Okay, all right. Lost in Translation. What was your experience when I first told you about it the first time?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be highly entertaining. Because I think the first thing you said to me was, how do you feel about comedy? And I was like, yes. Like, I've never done it before, but sure. And then the second thought was, this is my life. I'm constantly misunderstood and all the things. So in putting it together, it was like, oh, we get to like, not make fun of something, but to bring like, because that's why comedy is funny, right? Is because it's true. So that was what I think grabbed me the most, was it's like, oh, this is something that's really true. And there's more people who can relate to this, than myself. So to be able to like tell my story through this character and give that to other people, like, hey, like you're actually seen and known and heard and actually understood more than you think, was something that I was really excited about. But yeah, I think one of the things too that was hilarious was that I'll never forget is when we had the conversation in Roots, and we're just like dying in Roots because we're just laughing because you're telling me stuff of how it would be with like an elder in Africa, and like you can't like correct them because
you can't say that now because we can't let the cat out the bag.
I'm not gonna tell, like you can't say a certain thing to them about a certain thing that they do. And I just like lost it. I was just like, that's hilarious to me. Like, because I would totally lose it. Like if that happened, yeah. If I was in that situation, if I went to Africa and that happened, I would probably just laugh, and then I would be considered really rude. And I wouldn't be trying to be rude. So it's just one of those things where it's like, yep, this is very different, and I would have learned that the hard way. But it was very funny, and we do have an episode about that we'll talk about and do
and I think I remember that day, and honestly, seeing your reaction gave me validation. It was like the pat on the back. It was like the thumbs up I needed to continue. Because, I mean, as a creative person, you have 1001 ideas always bubbling in your head. And if you're like Damilola, like, I'm always like thinking about this and that and that and that. So I really wanted to tell this story. I tried one time, and I tried it with you earlier, and it didn't really work the way I wanted. And before I even reached out to you, I reached out to a couple of persons that I'm like, oh, I have this character that I'm thinking about. I have this idea that I want to create. Like, will you like to be part of it? And they just turned me down. And you're even Bethel. If you are in the Bethel community and they tell you, oh, I want to pray. Can I pray about it? That's like a no. That's like I just
That's a nice way of saying
yeah. It's like I just need to hear from Sky Daddy. Let's this. What's Sky Daddy? Like that's another conversation. But really, I got a lot of no's. Like, and I felt bad. I was like, is this a good idea? Is this really worth it? But for some reason, it was like a story that was waiting to be birthed. So I said, like, I have to do this. And I kept looking. And then it just popped up on my radar. I was like, oh, what if I ask Elektra? I was like, so I had all these ideas written down, sketched out, and then I started writing the episodes. I was like, okay, let me reach out to you. I remember reaching out to you and I was telling you the stories. And there was that particular one you reacted to. And I was like, and I kept, in my mind, my inner conversation was, why is she laughing that hard? Like, is it really this funny? But this really happened to me. Like, this is not fictional. This is like a true, like, if you're a Yoruba boy, like, not just African now, if you're Nigerian and you're Yoruba, you have a Yoruba parent or grandparent, like, this is what you hear. But to hear your reaction, I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is true. People will relate to this. And that was what really inspired me to continue. Then I met my beautiful friends, Tom and Anna, who are the producers, and I shared the ideas with them. And I remember Anna gushing about, jello fries, when I was talking about jello fries. And it was just beautiful that, oh, wow, okay, we can do this. This can really become something and something to share with the world. And so for me, as a writer, creating this story world, I didn't want people to just experience the story through one angle. Mm-hmm. I wanted people to experience this story and consume it through different creative expressions and through for the audience to cross-pollinate, like experience it through YouTube, experience it, visually, experience it through audio, and at every entry point, you encounter the story from different angles and different conversations, and that can allow you to travel. Mm-hmm. So you have this different experience every time you encounter the Lost in Translation story. So
at first when you watch the episode, you can think, oh, it's not that deep. But then you're like, actually, it is deeper than that. Like, there is something behind this. Like, yes, this is funny, but it's something that just kind of like draw people in, and get them curious.
Yeah, exactly. Of like, can we have a serious conversation from a lighthearted point of view? Mm-hmm. Or can we make light of a serious conversation? You understand what I'm saying? So it was that thing of like, I was like, oh, it would be cool to create an ecosystem around this story world where we have different things. And there's a lot more coming, but this is just the beginning, where when you watch the episode, you might not really get the gist of, get the tea. I'm getting Americanized, as you can see. If you watch, because the story is so short, like, so there's no time to really develop the characters. But with the web series, we touch on a subject. Then when you listen to the podcast, in the podcast, what happens is you get the motivations of the character, you get the bigger story, you get the conversation that we're really trying to go after from a sociocultural standpoint, from a political standpoint, from just everything that has to do with life, but that revolves around us as Africans and African Americans, just people. So
what would that be then for Grandpa? What would be his motivation in Angry Bird?
Okay, so we're going to the episode breakdown now. Okay. So Grandpa, when I was trying to create the character Grandpa, I was thinking like, what can people really relate to? Because I'm a millennial, all right. So if you understand, you know what a millennial is. So as a millennial, as a millennial. Millennial. Yes, queen. I'll keep saying that every time I get frustrated.
No.
Okay. As a millennial, you are caught in between the generation before. So you are not. Let me not generalize that, but as a person, as an individual millennial, I'm not as conservative as the baby boomers, and I'm not as liberally expressive as the Gen Z. But I wanted to create something that it's not just cultural. It doesn't just go after the cultural conversation, but also generational.
Yeah.
So you find this dynamics, this parallel between these characters that goes across culture, across generation, and just different layers. So also, I didn't have the budget of Elon Musk or Spielberg or Netflix. I was like, okay, how can we create a story that we can do for zero budget? I mean, that's not achievable, but I was like, how can we create a meaningful story with the this shoestring size budget, and that was how we started around that. Like everything happens in the house, but it's just beautiful how these characters interact. And Grandpa Tobi is your quintessential African parent. Like if you've ever seen any meme or any video on TikTok, on social media about like how African parents or grandparents react or do this, you understand, you will get Grandpa Tobi. Like he goes from extremely religious to temperamental or grumpiness to moments of deep wisdom to like his cluelessness. Like I don't understand why you are like this. You this child. Why are you like this? Like I don't understand you. I think what makes the general premise is that Grandpa Tobi's son, who we don't get to see at all, maybe once in a while in the story, Grandpa Tobi's son brings Grandpa Tobi to the United States, all right? And Grandpa Tobi's son also decides to be a foster parent. So he has Trisha living with him, but he's always at work. He's always busy. So hence why Grandpa Tobi and Trisha are the ones that collide like molecules in the chemistry lab. But Grandpa Tobi is ex-military. He has a military background. He's a Yoruba man. He's wise. He's very expressive. He's very religious. He believes, in serving his God and everything. And Trisha is the opposite. Trisha is a teenager. She's African American. She's been in the foster care system. She's gone through a whole lot. She has her own experience and everything. But I think I'd like to know your experience and your perspective when you received Trisha. Like, how did Trisha affect you, and how is Trisha? How are you like Trisha, and how are you different from Trisha?
When I would say that was the first thing, was I was like, this is me as a teenager. Just very much an attitude, thought I knew everything, knew I didn't, but was not going to tell you that. And then at the same time, didn't know who I was, so I kind of tried to fit in with whoever I was around and be like them. Type of thing. So I think with Trisha, her background in being in foster care, she's been moved around a lot. She's had to like be in these, even if she's been in the same city, she's had to be in different homes and around different people and maybe even different schools, all these things. And I moved around a lot when I was younger. My whole life, actually, I've moved around a lot. But like when you move to different schools when you're a kid, like you kind of just have to find one person that you can be friends with and then go from there, because usually that person has friends that you can be friends with and stuff like that. So for me, somehow I always became friends with like the most popular person. I don't really know how I did that, especially considering myself as shy when I was younger. But because I did that, it like got me around a lot of other people, which was a good thing. But then also with not really knowing who I was or how I fit in, who to fit in with, because usually I was the only Black girl. Like I was the only mixed kid, like type of thing. One school I was at was like all whites and Native Americans. And so that was like very different for me, because then I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I really just don't know where I fit. Like you have brown skin like I do, but your hair's straight and mine's curly, and we have completely different cultures, which I love. And so I think that's kind of had me be able to like be exposed to more things, because I've like had to, and me, like I'm genuinely curious. And so I think that's how me and like Trisha are a little bit different. Like I think Trisha's pretty set in her ways. She's like, she's not as curious. Like I don't feel like she asks a lot of questions, which now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, oh, like why doesn't she ask a lot of questions? Now I'm curious why she doesn't, type of thing. So yeah, I definitely see myself, my younger self, in her, and even me now. I think I'm still on that journey of like what we were talking about before, of bridging the gap between, you know, where my history was told, where I was told that my history started, right, was which was from the ships to the banks of America. Oh. Like we don't know anything past that. And now discovering like, hey, like actually there's a whole other history. There's a whole other place that my ancestors came from that I actually knew nothing about my entire life. And now I'm like almost like a teenager again, where I'm like, oh, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing. And discovering that. So it's just a really interesting dynamic that I find in playing Trisha, because yeah, like she is so lost, but like at the same time, like she's really confident and like has a lot of attitude and can compete with Grandpa Tobi, who, like you said, he's got a military background. Like for her to like kind of go head to head with him is fun to me, because me at that age was not really that. Like I was like all bark and no bite at all, and I feel like she's got a little bite to her as well. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And you bring up a beautiful point that was also part of the catalyst to me creating this whole story. And because when I got to America and I started leaning more into the story of the Black experience in America, it was then it hit me like, oh, I didn't know anything about these people. Like everything I know about them is based on assumptions. It's based on what I left the continent with, and that formed a distorted view. And I realized that, oh, it's the same thing, because like you said, like what you know starts from the slave ship to the shores of each colonies. And for us in Nigeria or Africa generally, like growing up, we're not taught the history of what happened beyond the ports. So we know when they tell you about slavery or the history of it, they tell you how it happened, like you learn about it, how it happened. It was not even taught in school, so you just pick up things here and there. Like yeah. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so you just hear things here and there, and all you hear is how the slaves were picked from different kingdoms and brought to either the Lagos port, or if you're Ghanaian, or just across the port, and that's how you know. when you go on trips on we call it excursion, like you go on like school trips, like they take you to the ports, the buildings, and you see everything, but the story never advances beyond that point. So it's like I came to America with a side of the story incomplete. Then I hear you like, oh, you have a side of the story incomplete. You know, it's like I have part A, you have part B, and you form a whole view from that part, and I form a whole view from that part. And many years later, we've not been able to retrace and connect that story and make it one seamless story. I mean, thank God for education, for social media, for technology. Like people are really going back to connect the dots, but there's still a whole lot of stuff to be repaired. And that being said, I think that was why I think it was beautiful to create to have a creative device where we have the character pour out our mind in a diary format, like she's journaling. So because in the web series, you hardly really know the motivations or the inner dialogue or what is happening to Trisha internally, or same for Grandpa. So in a way, created this device to have the Trisha's journal or Trisha's diary, where we hear everything happening internally for her in the episode, and then we bring it here to the podcast to have conversations about it and have different guests, give their view on how this even impacts the larger society. As an actor, this, like, oh, you are not your character. Like, your character exists and you exist. And the moment it's either, the cut goes on camera or if it's on stage, you leave that character there. So you having that conversation with Trisha and having to listen, because we're going to listen to Trisha's first journal from the Angry Bird episode to even really understand why was she saying, Mary, did you know? What the heck is Mary, did you know? Like, so I think for the second segment of this podcast, it would be great to really hone in and just go deeper into what was really, really going on in the mind of Trisha. And you as Elektra having to now experience this now, like with the things she just said in her journal, in her diary for this first episode, what was really happening?
Today was so interesting with Grandpa. He got all butthurt about being in isolation. Even called it a Marion. Having to spend so much more time with him, of course, has been annoying. But some things he says just confuse me. Like, I don't understand why he feels the need to, I don't know, at the end of everything. It's so dramatic. Oh. No. But other things he says makes me wonder. What if I was from Nigeria? Would the girls at school accept me then? If I had an accent and spoke Yoruba, if I had those pretty colored dresses and had cool stories about places they'd never been to. I wonder if there are people my color there, and if they're outcasts like me too. Or is that just an American thing? And he has so many opinions. Like, he just says things. Whatever comes to his mind, he has no problem saying. And sometimes I wish I was more like that. Don't get me wrong, he is way over the top about things. But I wonder what it would have been like if I would have met this family sooner. What if Grandpa was my actual grandpa? I would definitely be different. Would I be more accepted then? Because I was different. But if that's the case, shouldn't I be accepted now because I'm different? If I met them sooner, maybe I would know more of who I am, or I'm supposed to be. I wonder. what mystery my wonder creates for me, leading to more and more unanswered questions that confound me. Why can't things just make sense to me? Sometimes I feel my curiosity traps me. I only want to be, but what made me isn't supposed to be. What incidentally mixed is not supposed to be. But it happened, so how can it not be? Am I only what you see? Why won't you get closer to see? I think things would make more sense if you could see. So, are you or am I your inability to see? Who holds the lock and who holds the key? If vulnerability is the key, I'm not sure I want to use that key. Is there another one? Any one but that key? What good is it to wonder if everything that's me can't even be and no one can see well enough to use the key? What's the point? Anyway, tomorrow's another day, right? Let's see what it brings. Good night.
Okay, and we are back. Wow, that was an interesting, heartfelt vomit. No, is it vomit or just processing? Verbal processing. Trisha said all that.
Yeah.
Wow, and I think for me, it's interesting to hear your character talk to you. It's interesting to hear the inner world of your character. Like I'm seeing here, I'm like, oh wow, like she's going through all that. Like,
and what's funny too is I was like, oh, I don't feel like she's curious, but then I think Grandpa Tobi and how he is makes her curious, because that's what she's talking about this whole time, is like, I wonder this, I wonder that, like, and I don't think that's normal for her. Like before, it was just like everything she's gone through, it's like, this is just how it is, this is my life, this is what I have to deal with. What does questioning it actually help me to do? But now there's this other dynamic that's being brought in and like in her face, and she's starting to question things, and starting to wonder about things that I think she just didn't give herself the permission to think about.
Is that why she goes on the Mary Did You Know rant?
I think she goes on the Mary Did You Know rant because I think she just wants to test and push Grandpa and see how far she can go before he like just explodes. Because I think she just has this thing in her where she wants to like see, because that's what kids want. Like they actually want to have boundaries in place. They actually want to be corrected. They want to have discipline because they know that they're loved in that way. And so I think for her, like, this is her way of like testing and pushing that, like, is he really going to stick to what he says? Is he really going to be consistent? Is he really going to like follow through with what he tells her he's going to? Because she's never really had anybody do that. She's been able to get away with things her whole life. And so now she has this like solid person in her life who's there all the time and who's like being a disciplinary in her life. And she's like, doesn't really know what to do with it, but it actually underneath it all, like, I don't know if she would explain it this way now, but like, honestly, it's because it makes her feel like she's loved and she's taken care of, because she's never had that before. She's never had someone care about her enough to actually correct her, to care about her enough to actually tell her to not do something because it's for her good. And like actually explain why. You know, he'll like he may go off on his rants and like be crazy or whatever and like fly off the handle, but at the same time, like, he gives her an explanation, whereas before, like, it's just like, oh, because I said so, because I'm the adult. And he explains, like, this is why it is the way it is to her. So
this is the first time we're experiencing these characters. I mean, this is the first time everyone is getting to experience these characters. So you find Trisha pushing the button, and you find Grandpa like just exploding. And it was just supposed to be a joke, and it escalates so fast. Like, next thing you know, Grandpa is talking about all the troubles in the world that happened in the past year. And he's talking about Taylor Swift, talking
All
about
the Taylors.
vaccine, talking about isolation, like COVID-19, the Omarion variant, talking about Kanye and Bill Gates being single. And I think for him, the underlying thing there is that I am frustrated and I don't know how to communicate that. Like, I am angry, but I don't want to direct that anger towards you. So I'm keeping it suppressed. I don't want to talk about it. I'm keeping it suppressed. So everything you hear, like comes across as a joke is Grandpa's truth getting lost. So he doesn't know how to just say, Trisha, I'm actually not really happy right now. Like, I've been in isolation for like 10 days and I've not been able to have a great time like I thought I would, but can you just be patient with me? And I'm sure Trisha would have said the same thing too, like, I'm actually like tired of being stuck here too.
Yeah.
So you understand that, how do we as a people communicate? Like, how are we alike, like African Americans, like you as an African American in America here, and myself as an African, like, how are we alike in how we communicate? Like, do we resort to just like a shout contest, like shut up,
let me tell
end of
you.
conversation. Like,
Let me tell you.
we're like that, right? Because we're like that. Like, if Trisha was a Yoruba girl, she would have ended up in ER. She would have ended up in.
Well, she probably would have known better, and she probably wouldn't have done that. But and I think that's the thing too. I think that's how even Trisha shows like her, I guess, the way that she cares for him, because she's like, I want his attention, or I'm gonna like hang out in here, or like, I'm doing this thing, and even though like I don't know if her intention is to annoy him.
Let me ask you this though: how does Trisha, coming from the foster care system, how does that impact our character? How does that impact her as a person? How does that contribute to what happens to her in this Angry Bird episode? Because you find Trisha, you find two angry persons in this situation right now, and it's just boiling. At the end of the episode, Grandpa is like, I've lost my appetite. He's not even eating. What he's saying is that what Grandpa is saying there is that I don't want to have this conversation again. Like I'm just like, I need to check out. Like, I don't want to hang around you. I need to check out. And he says that I've lost my appetite. So, but I'm interested to learn from you, because I don't know about the foster care system. I'm very new in America, but in this episode, I'll just for the viewers, for people that will interact with this content much later, I would like to see what it is like for not just even a baby now, or a child, but a teenager, someone very close to being independent, coming from the foster care system, but also Black, and also a girl living with people that are not your biological parents.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in the process of doing research on it, but from my experience of the foster care system, from working at a clinic here and everything like that, like, sometimes they can be moved around like multiple times a month, or, or within a year, like they can end up in different homes, like pretty quick. They can go back to their parents and then end up back in a foster home. Like, it flip-flops a lot, so it's very unstable. So she's definitely used to instability, I would say. And I think that's again why she like pushes buttons, right? Because she's like, are you really gonna like be consistent? Are you really actually gonna like stick around, type of thing? Because things can change so quickly, and that's not. I don't know if that necessarily has to do with foster parents themselves. Sometimes I think it is like, oh, their decision, their choice, and then other times it's, who knows, all kinds of paperwork and different things. So there's many reasons, but I think that really just affects like her mind, because in just from being here in Reading, like in my experience, like most of the foster families are white, which that's great, that's amazing. Like I'm glad there's people who want to do it. It doesn't matter like what color you are, but with that in mind, thinking like, oh, if that's what she's grown up around and she's not really been around people who look like her, who or anything like this, and now she's in this environment where she's like, oh, they do look like me, but they don't still, like I still don't quite fit in, like I am still different from them, but I'm more similar to them than I've been to anybody else. I think she's really wanting to cling to that, but she doesn't really know how to hope for it because of like, oh, this could change at any moment. Oh, they could change their mind, or oh, I could be moved, or say, you know, her parents come back into the picture and they deem them stable enough for her to go back to them, you know? So it's like, it can change at any time. So I think that really affects how she interacts with everybody else, because she's constantly looking for them to leave. So I think that's probably her biggest thing. So it's like, as a girl, like, so me, I have a great relationship with my dad. Like, we have an amazing relationship. I can always count on my dad. He's always been there. And if I didn't have that, I don't really know how, like, I would probably be a completely different person. And so for her, like, as a girl, to not have like that father figure that's stable and steady and there all the time, yeah, I think this is just a new dynamic for her, that she's like, I want to hope for this, but it's like too good to be true to have this in my life. So I think there's a lot of ways and reasons that affects her that we could probably talk hours about. But yeah, I think that's
and that's what gets misconstrued, because what she wants actually is different from how she's communicating it. And that's what gets Grandpa frustrated. And I wanted to ask you this, because from what I hear you share on that is, I find the connection between how back in the slave trade era too, how slaves didn't have that sense of stability and that sense of roots too in a particular place, because they kept being moved from plantation to plantation or being sold. And it was, the families were torn apart and separated. And to still find that, I'm not saying that is peculiar to only to African Americans, you know, but to find that can be the experience of an African American girl child here in America is interesting. So I want to ask you two questions connecting to that. How does the presence of a father affect an African American girl child growing up in America, either in the home or outside of it? But just Lord help my English. What I'm trying to say is, how does the presence of a father or a father figure help the development of the black girl, of the brown or the brown skin girl?
Yeah. Honestly, like, yeah, I always say this about my dad. He's literally my hero. Like, if I didn't have him in my life, and so my dad that I talk about normally is my dad who raised me, which we would say like stepdad. I don't call him my stepdad. He's my dad, period. And then I did meet my biological father when I was 13. And we had an amazing relationship as well. So for me, with my dad who raised me, when he came into the picture when I was like a year old, so, or maybe even younger. Like, he actually knew my mom and her family before I was even born. And just thinking back and realizing like, yeah, I would just be a completely different person if he hadn't been in my life, because he's the one who taught me about racism. Like, even if it wasn't like, hey, these people are being racist, like it wasn't this thing, but he taught me how to protect myself, taught me how to look out for myself, taught me how to let things not affect me. Or like, if they did affect me, like that I could always go and I could talk to him about it. And if I didn't have that, like, I think there would just be this mindset that I had that is really broken. Because I didn't have to fight because he did. He told me about it. Like, in high school and growing up, they were the only Black family in the town that they lived in. And he had to fight all the time. Like, especially in junior high and high school. And like when his brothers were there, like he had to fight for them. He had to fight because, you know, someone wanted to call them names or talk about them. Like, he just fought all the time. And because he did that, and like even my grandpa telling me stories of things that he had gone through, and I remember hearing them and just being like, this is so crazy. Like, I can't believe this is real, because I never had to experience it personally. So they both fought. Like, so my grandpa fought in a certain way that my dad didn't have to. And then my dad fought in a certain way that I don't have to. And then now it's like, I'm going to fight in a certain way that my kids don't have to. And they both had to fight, like, physically. I've never had to do that because of my skin color or anything like that. So having his presence in my life was huge. Like, I always knew he was there. I always knew that I was protected, that I was taken care of, that I was covered. And I think that was like the main thing, was that it didn't matter where I was. It doesn't matter now that I'm in California and he's in Arizona. Like, I can call my dad. I know I'm safe. Like, it's just one of those things that I know I have. And because I mentally know that, like, I'm not afraid to face different things. And so I think that's just it's a huge part of it. Like, a girl needs her dad, especially to tell her. And my dad used to do my hair. My mom didn't do my hair. My dad did my hair. Like, so it's just this thing where there was this connection that me and him had because of that just let me know, like, oh, I matter. Like, my skin is beautiful. My hair is beautiful. Like, I just never had those thoughts that they weren't, because the way he treated me and the way that he like interacted with me showed me that they were, and that. So, and
it's interesting to connect that with the relationship between Grandpa Tobi and Trisha, because Grandpa Tobi is this essence of a father figure for this girl come fresh out of the foster system, and I mean, she's still in the foster system. What am I saying? And you find that grandpa's expression of love is a tough love. And it's kind of like, you know, I'll probably only tell you I love you twice in your lifetime. First now your wedding, second time maybe when you have your first baby, or when you buy me the first car. I mean, that's how African parents are, like, or African father figures are, like, you know, very strong, stoic, not very emotionally flexible or emotionally vulnerable. So it's that very hair dryer approach they come with every time. And you see Grandpa Tobi always there. But Grandpa Tobi feels handicapped kind of in raising Trisha, because he feels like, this is America. Like, if this girl can just say anything to me. If she was in Nigeria, I'd have given her some nice, you know, butt whooping. But this is America. I don't want to end up in somewhere in Alcatraz or all that place in New York. But gradually, you know, wrapping up this conversation, I think I want to connect it with something Trisha mentioned in a diary from this Angry Bird episode, which is about her feeling lost, but something about Grandpa Tobi that she finds that draws her to want to connect with the culture that she feels is missing, because you have in Lost in Translation, you have the cultural gap, you have the generational gap, and you have these two group of people. You have two distinct experience, but from the same line. Like, bottom line is we are the same people. We are from this. Our experience over time has varied, but if you were to trace, we're connected. Like our ancestors are connected, So, but all of a sudden, because they were taken from their homeland, they got lost. And it's not interesting that sense of what's the word now? That sense of feeling lost, it still prevails in the identity in the Black experience till today. Is that I don't want to ask you why is that, but I think it is worth mentioning that the system is still perpetuated in that way to make to create that sense of like I don't know who I am, or I'm something in me is missing, like I'm looking for something, like Trisha finds something that's been missing in Grandpa Tobi because she's in this house now. Why do you think she's mentioning that? Because Trisha told you that. Trisha told Elektra that, right?
Yeah, I think it's mainly because, like you said, with our school systems, we only learn so much. And then everything else is kind of like picked up from conversations or overhearing things and different things like that. And now it's like, oh, I actually have someone in front of me now who represents like everything that I've never known about me. Which I think just kind of mirrors my experience with meeting you and having, African friends now and being like, oh, and there's so much I didn't know, and I think that's kind of just what triggers it in her to realize, like, what if I knew who I really was, then I wouldn't have to prove that to anybody to be accepted. Because I think that's her thing, is she doesn't feel like she fits in anywhere. So she wants to be accepted. And she thinks, oh, if I was different like Grandpa Toby's different, then I would be accepted because it's unique. Whereas like, oh, I'm different because, my parents, one is white and one is Black. Like, that makes me actually not fit in. That doesn't, even though that is unique, that's not seen as unique. Like, that places her just as an outsider no matter where she is. So to me, like, she thinks, oh, if I can grasp this, because I feel like she's very aware that Grandpa Toby knows who he is, and he has no qualms about like telling you who he is and what he thinks and all these things, and she wants to be like that as well, and not back down from it. Where I think she's just tried to fit in so many ways, and so she sees that in him, and she's like, oh, like, maybe I can't actually be like this, because maybe there is something like this that's in me, because why am I asking all these questions now? I've never asked these questions before, type of thing. So.
Okay. To close this chapter, the chapter on the first episode.
Yeah.
The title itself, Angry Bird.
Oh, yes. Actually, there's something that I've been wanting to say this whole time about that, which is, I saw this post by Caroline Leaf, and she said something about, I sat with my anger long enough until she told me her real name was Grief. And how we had talked about earlier, like, oh, the gap, and even just what you're saying now of like, she's trying to find herself and she's lost. It comes out as anger, but really buried underneath that is like this grief and this hurt that, even like you said with African men and how they are, it's like very stoic. Like, we don't really get emotional and all those things. But yeah, it's like, if we actually let ourselves meet with our grief, then
I have a question to ask you, and because I want to keep it real on this podcast, and for me, I don't want to be afraid to try to have this conversation. I don't want to be afraid to be the bridge. I'm not afraid for this to be the bridge, because someone said, oh, bridges get walked over. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool. So what I'm not afraid is, I know that in the course of this, I'll probably make mistakes. I'll probably say the wrong thing or make messes or not give.
We both will, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, there's a tendency for that to happen. But I think the hard for me is that once I learn that, oh, this is the right way to this, I'm going to come back to say, oh, I'm sorry, that was wrong, but this is actually the truth. Yeah. And I think because of the fear that we have today, people are actually afraid of being bold enough to share their thoughts and their opinions or what they perceive. And at times I'm too afraid to say I'm sorry, to say, oh, actually it was not right, this is actually the truth. You get what I'm saying? So, but I don't want to go from that route, because I want to engage people. I want this to be conversations that I had in homes, in coffee bars, and just generally. But to pick up to that, the reason why I preface before saying this is that is it true, or will it be dangerous to generalize that every African American person or every Black person in America carries around with them some level of anger and trauma and pain and grief?
I would say that's...
Is it dangerous for me to say that? Like, oh, every Black person in America is walking around with some deep level of anger. So if they say this, or if they react in a type of way, is because of the deep-seated anger, or even transgenerational.
I would agree with that, because I'm experiencing that, especially in the last 2 years of my life. I've gone through this personally, where I'm like, oh, I didn't think I had this pain. I didn't think I identified with this. I didn't think I was allowed to actually feel this pain. So for me, I didn't feel like, oh, I'm not Black enough, so I'm not allowed to actually feel this pain. So I didn't allow myself to feel it. Didn't mean it wasn't there, but I was very angry. I'm still very angry. And that's the thing where I think I've held back even a lot in BCA still, because I'm like, I don't just want to come across as the mad Black woman. That's how I feel I'm going to be portrayed, or that's how I'm going to feel I'm going to be cast, because I have this anger. So, I would say that there is a level of truth to that, if we don't actually sit with it and we don't actually face it.
I don't know if it is generally true, but there's a perception that, oh, Black women are very aggressive and violent and always angry, and you see Hollywood portray that. You see the society even encourage that conversation. Like, if a Black woman lives in a truest form, it says, oh, she is too ghetto, or she's not civil, or she's not. And if she expresses her mind like, well, this is how I feel, and then she's angry, she's too wild, But how true is that? Because I see Trisha as a Black woman, or even if she's young now, she's going to grow up into being a Black woman, and she has history, she has stuff that she's dealing with. But how much of that does that contribute to how she's been put in that stereotypical box of like, oh, because I live this way, I've been seen, I've been perceived in this very, very weird way.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's almost a protection thing. We kind of have to be, because that protects us, because it keeps people away, puts up a wall. And then there is an anger in us that I feel like we just don't actually get to express it. If a white man is angry about something.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you now, because of the world we live in now, and what I'm learning is not to always put everything in a broad stroke. If I want it to be an individual experience from an individual standpoint. So, because it would be dangerous to say, oh, if you're a white man, because there might be other white men who are not like that.
Okay.
But it might be
a friend of mine.
Okay, exactly.
I can say an example, in high school, if I don't know what it was, something had happened, but they got mad, and he's like, big dude, like bald head, tattoos, all the things. And he's given the time of day in his anger where I wasn't. Like, so...
A Caucasian, a white guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, there was a whole situation, and this guy was involved, these other girls, whatever. People were talking about each other. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. People are telling me, I don't know. So we get dragged off to the office, and we have to talk to the principal and stuff. But then the other girls who were involved, who were white, and the guy who was white didn't actually have to go to the office. But, like, I'm ranting and raving, and I'm yelling at the security guard and telling him that as I'm going to the office that they need to bring them along too, because they're the whole problem. Like, it was a whole scene. Yeah, like, it's just coming out. It was a whole scene, right? But, like, you know, it was like they were given the benefit of the doubt where I wasn't.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I've seen. And then it's like, okay, well, now I have to defend myself. Like, now I have to defend why I was being defensive and why I was angry, because you provoked me in being angry. Like, this whole situation happens. Whereas it's like, they didn't get questioned. They didn't get brought in. They weren't in the room when the whole thing was happening. And it was only their conversation. And I was told later they had a conversation with them. Like, did it really happen? Maybe. I don't know. And even if it did, it's like, why was I told I would be, if I kept talking about it, I would be suspended, and they weren't. Type of situation, you know? And then, like, the guy was just forgotten about.
We've been having this chat for a minute now, and I don't know, because I mean, there's more episodes to come. Yeah. And we have more other people on the show to also continue this conversation. But because this is the first one, and we're just setting the ground for what the conversation will look like and everything. But I'm worried, thinking that, is there a thing where the voice of the Black woman is, I don't want to say intentionally, but it looks like there's something always wanting to drown her voice. Like, either from the men of her race or men of other races, or even the way the society is structured, either just generally, like, she's dealing with a whole lot of stuff. Like, why is that? Like, I mean, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, we have the first Black female vice president right now, and we have the first Black Supreme Court justice person, and I mean, it looks like there's a lot of advancement and growth, but how deep does that go in healing or giving the volume to the voice of the Black woman? Because you give a very peculiar experience directly related to your own story and situation, and that's with a member of the opposite race. But they're like Trisha and Grandpa. Grandpa is a Black man from Africa, from Nigeria, and Grandpa is also dealing with his own anger, and which is a result of the society he grew up in too. Like, in Nigeria, I don't want to say, let me not speak for the entire Africa now, but as growing up in Lagos, it's madness every day. Like, the first time I came to America, the first thing I said to myself, like, how have I lived in that place for that long? Like, because it felt normal to be angry. Like, it's just like, we're all mad people in that country because the things we do, how we live, how we have conversations. And like, I came here and I'm like, wow, no, that's not normal. Like, it's not normal to live like that. You know, because you're basically trying to survive every day. You're trying not to die. You're trying to get through traffic. You're trying to get past police brutality. You're trying not to get cheated by somebody. You're trying not to get overused or exploited by your boss. You're trying not to, you know, so it's like you're just constantly bombarded. And so you have all that pent up anger in you. So when you not leave that environment and you come to a much more saner climate, then you're just like this. I don't know what to call it, but Grandpa feels like that kind of typical character. And you see him almost reacting to that, to where how he reacts almost is like drowning out the voice of Trisha. But I mean, that's just peculiar to this episode, but I wanted to use that as an example to say, like, how, and I don't want, asking you this might put too much responsibility on you giving the answer we're trying to, but do black women have a voice in America? Do black women in America have a voice? I mean, I think that's a better way to put it. Do black women in America as of today, do they have a voice?
I would say yes. I would say, is it listened to? Like, do people really take that in?
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. I think it's getting better for sure.
Yeah.
Especially just like there's a book that I just got called Supreme Actresses, which is about black actresses throughout the years and how they started making momentum for each other as they've gone. So I think yes, but there still can be more room made for it. So that's a whole other conversation.
Okay.
That we're not going to go into right now.
Okay. All right. It's been a fun conversation on the first episode of Lost in Translation, the podcast. I've had Elektra here with me, Damilola, and I mean, it's been kind of like here and there. We've talked on this, talked on that. I just felt like going around, but I think we've explored the foundation of the story to lay out what people will expect from the web series itself, showing on YouTube, and the other podcasts that will come from it. And typically, the format of this entire creative ecosystem is you find stories being introduced in the web series, and from that will lead to a conversation on the podcast, and other things will pop from there where these characters also do their own thing, because these characters have their life of their own. Like Grandpa has an Instagram account. Like Trisha is on TikTok. Grandpa is on TikTok too. So watch the space for Grandpa's TikTok. He might be dancing, he might be singing, yeah. You never know.
I'll probably not know what he's doing.
You never know.
It'll probably be a disaster. But it will be entertaining. Yes.
So we just want to have fun. Want to have fun while having deep conversations that shouldn't just be brought up, but also encourage people to have those conversations to reach a point where we can both heal. And just bridge that gap, because I want it to be that at some point, like, we just love ourselves, like the animosity between us is completely obliterated, that discord, that disconnect, whoever is responsible for it or whatever is responsible for it is completely removed. And but I'm happy to know that, I mean, in the past, in recent years, there's a new awakening of African Americans here wanting to connect back to the roots. You see people traveling back to different countries after they found their DNA, ancestry DNA. Yeah, like, so I think the most, not to digress now, but the most beautiful experience I had when I first got here was when a black friend of mine said to me, like, "Oh, I just did my DNA and I found out I'm 10% Ghanaian and I'm 20% from Guinea and I'm 35% from Nigeria." And I'm thinking, like, how can you have all those countries in you?
That's like me.
Like, how can you have all those countries in you and you know all this, there's the specific percentage? Because for me, that's strange. I was like, I am Yoruba and I am Nigerian, I mean, maybe I don't know, but that's what I know. Yeah. Right, but to have someone do that DNA and find out that they're a mixture of different tribes and ethnicity, I think that's also beautiful. That there's a pain to that, but there's also a beauty to that too. And I think
what we get to discover.
yeah, exactly. It's all part of the discovery, and I love that people are doing that. People are even traveling back home, like going. Yeah. So yeah. So one day
that'll be me.
One day we will not have arguments because we'll understand each other, like, and things will not be lost in translation, because I don't think words alone are the things that get lost in translation. I think thoughts, I think actions, I think motivations, gestures.
Yeah. We don't know why we do what we do. We can't tell somebody else that either. So
yes, queen.
Okay, we're gonna stop. We're never gonna stop talking. We need to end this right now. You guys should just cut it because
no, but it's a good point. Please, no, I needed to say that again. The why.
Yeah, like if we ourselves don't know why we do the things that we do, like, then we can't actually. I can't tell you what I need if I don't know what I need.
And if you don't communicate the why, if I don't understand your why,
then nothing I do makes sense to you.
Because it gets lost.
Yeah,
and
nothing I say makes sense.
Exactly, and it's the same way. It's the same way. Like, I have a why. If I don't communicate that, if I don't know that why too, it's just a whole
just like
mess.
with acting, we have to know why our character's doing something. We don't know why, then anything we do in the scene is not going to be motivated, and it's not going to make sense.
So, Lost in Translation, the series, is all about the why. The why.
Why?
Why me?
Why Angry Bird?
Why you? Why Angry Bird? Why America?
Okay, end it now.
Okay, I don't know how we're going to end this. Like, what is the professional way to end the podcast?
The professional way to end is thank you all for coming and listening to us, however you do that. If that's watching it, be on Spotify. We appreciate you. Share it. Do all those things.
Yes.
Talk to people, have conversations, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for all those that have been listening too, because this is a podcast.
I just tried.
You said watching. So thank you for all those that have been listening, either while you're cooking, or you're traveling, or you are,
Yeah, Grandpa just showed up. Maybe just cut.
Yeah,
just cut
okay,
it off.
good.
Just turn it off.
Okay, bye. I'm a day.